Yeah, you've given a historical sort of account there, a of age of tribal communities. Rami, I want to bring you in. Like I was just, my producer just shared some facts that the inclusion of Meiteis in the ST list was rejected as far back as 1982. So this is not a demand that has started with this conflict. This has happened before, and of course, as you said, the right to demand cannot be taken away from any Indian as long as it's within the framework of the law and the constitution. My question to you is, to both you and the Colonel in closing comments, is look ahead. What next? If this order is just one step or no step, what now? It's been more than 10 months.
Barkha, you're quite right. It's been very long, but history also tells us that I remember when the Kuki Naga clashes happened, it took many, many years for it to come, almost over 5 or 6 years for it to come to some amount of peace and conclusion. These are very sensitive communities. They're very high strung on identity, and of course, like Mr. Toming very eloquently spoke about the history, but history also, these identities have been forged very later in the history of India. It was the British who brought it into the census. There wasn't sort of separate communities called tribals before that. But now I would say this in a different way to Mr. Toming, that yes, it's coming of age because people are trying to assert that identity. And I think that has caused certain fault lines which needn't actually be there. I also think we need to really underscore the fact that a lot of these states, Barkha, because it has been in a state of conflict post-independence, most of these states, if you look at Nagaland, if you look at Mizoram, if you look at Manipur, they've been in a state of conflict. There is this economy that has sort of cropped up, which is behind the shadows. It's this underground economy, which is related to drugs, which is related to corruption. A lot of these privileges that a lot of these states have, whether it's the autonomous councils, also, have a problem of implementation. So we need to address better implementation. We need to address grievances on both sides. And I think those grievances need to be addressed by themselves, not what the other person is getting or not getting, but what is it that would make life better for yourself. So it needs to be detangled from each other, and grievances should be put aside, and based on that, negotiation should happen, not what you can have or not have. The other thing is, Barkha, that historically mistakes have been made by arming civilians, for whatever reason that there may be. And I think this disarmament is very important, because we're talking about kids who are coming of age, from 20 years ago, but kids are seeing this conflict also. So when is this cycle going to end? And I think that is never going to happen, Barkha, if we leave it on the government to say, oh, bring all the weapons back. Because it is also a fact that now there are things like RPG mortars that are being made at home, because it's so easy to access how to make arms and ammunition on the website.
So if the government doesn't bring the weapons back, who does?
See, the government can ask. The government can have combing operations. Combing operations, as we've seen in Moray, have been difficult because it's within such heavily densely populated areas. But I think civil organizations, leaderships, elders of these communities need to really put a strong call out saying no more. We cannot have our children holding arms and weapons when they should be in schools. And, all these communities, all tribal communities, one of the things that you look up to them for is the kind of respect that they have for authority, they have for their own leadership, they have for their elders, and this is the time that they really need to step up.
Absolutely. I think, one thing that really stayed with me from my reporting trip to Manipur was, as I said, school-going children being weaponized. I mean, they actually have weapons. They know how to assemble them. They know how to make them. These are images, of course, of someone who lost a loved one. But those was one of the school-going men. And ironically, Rami, he said he had wanted to join the army. And in both communities, we found young civilians, school-going civilians, armed. Last word to you, Colonel Chaturvedi. You, of all people in this panel, think of this as maybe a small step, but one step of conflict resolution. I'm struck by what Rami said, that you cannot by force disarm civilians. Many of these are villages, these are farmers, these are children with weapons, they're women at the front line of all of these conflicts. So by diktat, perhaps disarming is not possible. It's too late now. then what is the way forward? Last word to you. You said it's one step, there are many other steps. What are some of those other steps?
Ma'am, step one should be, I feel that historically, we have a huge gap between the front end leadership who are front ending the whole show and the top leadership. This leadership has to coincide and inputs have to be expected, however bad or unpalatable they might seem,
Mm-hmm.
to everyone all around. If the children are being weaponized, we have to accept it. They are being done, and we have to counter it then.
Yeah.
Army solution should always be the last solution, ma'am. Because if the army does combing operations, then, ma'am, the nature of the job is that there will be collaterals. I mean, there are collateral damages, and you can't deny it. I mean, if the soldier is trained in a manner that you fire on me, I'm going to fire back. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
Fire is coming, khatam.
Yeah.
So, there has to be a via media to this. The tribal leaders, and most importantly, there are a large number of missionaries and even Hindu Meitei leaders, who would be in ISKCON and all. They can play a major part in getting everyone on board. I'm not talking about playing the religion card, but they play a very important part in the lives of Kukis and Nagas and all the tribals. I have been
Mm.
there, and I used to go to churches myself on Sundays. I mean, so we have to get around the tribal leaders, the Kulakpas and the Nagas, and the Kuki leaders. Kulakpas are leaders of a group of large number of villages, and the only answer to this is that everybody has to first understand that we have to end violence, and enough is enough.